You're listening to Unlocked, Your Career by Design with Samantha Flores, Fortune 100 executive, billion-dollar business leader, and founder of Powerhouse Code. Here, you'll discover how to build authority, attract opportunities, and lead with authentic presence. If you're ready to claim your spotlight and step into your next level, you're in the right place. Let's unlock your career by design. The language of leaders, executives, and senior decision makers. So the mistake I see so many professionals and leaders make is that they don't speak the same language. How are you supposed to drive a team forward, to drive an organization forward, to drive your business forward if you're not speaking the same language? I have been speaking to so many CEOs and partners the last couple of weeks, and the number one thing that's keeping them awake at night, my team doesn't think strategically. They don't see the bigger picture. They're hard workers, they're executors. But I have so much on my mind. I see so many challenges and so many opportunities, but I don't have the support of my team because they're in the operational, they're in the tactical, and they're doing a great job, but I need them to level up. I need them to step up and think long term and think bigger picture. And so whenever I talk to the employees, the actual professionals, the talented professionals, they tell me, I work so hard. I do everything. I'm the best. My team loves me, and leadership doesn't see it. So there's a clear gap, and that gap comes down to communication and expectations. Because imagine your leaders, the executives, the partners, they are on the top of the Himalaya. And the Himalaya, as you know, it's quite a journey to get there. And so when you're at the top of the Himalaya and you're looking down, you see all these challenges, all these opportunities, and you think there's so much that we need to do in order to get to the next level, in order to reach our objectives. Whereas our teams are standing either at the bottom of the Himalaya or they're at base camp in the middle. And they're hustling and grinding and getting the deliverables done, deadline here, deadline there. But how, if you're one of those talented professionals, how are you thinking bigger picture? How do you bring your helicopter view? How you help your leaders? How are you the business partner, the consultant that is thinking bigger picture, that is thinking long term, and not only focused on getting the job done, ticking all the boxes on your job description? And so whenever I talk to executives, because I do strategic summits, strategic sessions as well with companies and their leaders, that is the main thing we want to unlock. How can we get the team to think more strategically? Now, here's the thing. Many people think that thinking strategically is coming up with a strategic plan as to what are the objectives of the next year or the next 3 years. When in reality it is, do you have a commercial mindset? Do you understand how your role fits into the bigger picture? You might think that you're here to do a job. And I spoke about that in the last episode. That's an employee mindset. And when you're listening to this podcast, that means that you're a leader. A leader mindset, an executive mindset is, how does my role, not job, how does my role fit in this bigger picture? How do I contribute to the strategic priorities of my firm, of my organization, of my company? And how can I make sure that I'm speaking the same language as my leaders and as my decision makers? Because that is what will differentiate you from the rest. Because most people are only or mostly, maybe not only, but mostly focused on getting the job done as quickly as possible or as excellent as possible. Remember the trap of getting a glowing performance review? So your leader and your decision maker are thinking about, how do I make sure that I either improve revenue, reduce expenses, make sure that I have a healthy team culture, that my people are developing, that the retention is high. How are you thinking about those things? And when you look at your role within your organization, how are you contributing to something bigger than your job description, than that piece of paper? And that's when you start making a real difference. And so I want you to consider for a second, what would it look like if you would start speaking the same language as your executives, as your leaders, as your partners? If you're at a firm, law firm, accounting firm, tax firm, what would that look like? Because here's a mistake most professionals make. They talk to their leaders based on the nitty-gritty operations they're in. Your leader has a million things on their minds. Usually, they're thinking visionary. How do we grow our organization? How do we capture market share? How do we grow our presence, our brand, our reputation? How do we make sure that our people, our employees, are continuing to develop and they don't stagnate? How do we attract the best talent in the market? How do we retain this talent? So those are the things that you would benefit if you start thinking about. How to become a business partner to your leader, to your executives, to your manager even, instead of using your biweeklies or your weekly check-ins to talk about your deliverables, your operations, where you need help, you need a holiday allowance sign off. I mean, that's not using your time strategically to advance to your next level. Your next level, you should be talking strategy. What are your focus areas for the next 90 days? And what does success look like at the end of next year? And that ignites a very interesting conversation, because when you have those insights, the next question becomes, how can I help from where I'm at? How can I help these 90-day focus areas become a reality? How can I help the next 12 months strategic priorities actually happen? Because many companies have decks, like 80 slide decks of their strategy. And then a year from now, they will have another 80-page deck of their strategy. But is that strategy ever really executed? Because it's one thing to have a yearly plan, goal setting, and all the things. But then, who's going to execute it? Because if the team is stuck in the nitty-gritty, in the operations, in the tactical, how is that strategy going to get implemented? And that is untapped potential, dear listeners. When you start to elevate yourself beyond your current role description, not job, role description, and start seeing the bigger picture, and start sharing your thought leadership, your perspective beyond the borders, the box that you're operating in, that's when the real domino effect starts to happen. Because all of a sudden, you're helping to move your team forward. You're helping to move your organization forward. And you are linking your work to the strategic priorities, to the focus areas. And so now all of a sudden, you don't become a resource, someone who gets the job done that is easily replaceable. You become an asset, somebody that not only delivers on the role that is expected of them, but also adds value beyond the role. And once you start adding value beyond your role, that's when opportunity starts to surface, because the decision makers and the leaders start seeing your potential, seeing that you're the person that they can spar with. You are the person that understands the bigger strategy and what help they need when they're standing at the top of the Himalaya, looking down and thinking, how on earth are we going to drive this organization forward if our people are stuck at base camp, haven't even started yet? It's one thing to be stuck at base camp, but imagine being at the foot of the mountain. So next time you're thinking about, I'm not being seen, I'm not being heard, they don't understand all the things I'm struggling with, that's an employee mindset. That's the fastest way to keep you stuck. And so the beauty is when you elevate, when you travel to the top of the Himalaya and look down. And the difference is you are probably in operations and you are probably in the nitty gritty and grinding and delivering your role and doing all the things, hitting all the deadlines. But if you once a week can catapult yourself, time travel to the top of the Himalaya, and then start to see or experience what your leaders are experiencing and incorporate that in your daily work, that's when you start driving extremely a lot of value. A lot of value. Because now all of a sudden, you're not an operator, you're not an executor, you're not a resource, you're not an employee number. You become a leader, you become a strategic thinker, you become someone who had perspective and thought leadership. And while you might have been hired to do a certain role, now all of a sudden you're becoming a consultant, you're becoming a business partner, your value is insane. So, the Himalaya, right? What can you do? What is it that you need in order to propel yourself to the top of that mountain and look down and see the challenges and the opportunities and give your base camp level or standing at the foot of the mountain a different meaning, a different understanding of the role you play in the organization? What do you bring to what can you bring to the table? Not what do you bring to the table. What can you bring to the table that goes beyond the boundaries of your role description? Because once you start adding value when you don't have a title yet, your leaders will start to move to make it happen for you because you add so much value. The question is, are you here to stay an employee or are you here to step up and be a leader? And for the executives listening to this episode, remember when you were once standing at base camp, what it was like thinking that the leaders don't understand you. They have no idea what you're doing. All the work, all the people, you're managing up, managing down, managing across, you're in the middle, squeezed between the top and the bottom. And so as you're now standing at the top of the Himalaya, dear executive, how can you inspire your team? How can you be more clear on the North Star, on the vision? Because once that vision, once that North Star is so compelling, your team will start to move into the direction. But standing on the top of Himalaya, seeing all the challenges, seeing all the opportunities, and complain about a team that doesn't have the skills and the capabilities is not going to help you. How can you take them on a journey? How can you make that North Star so attractive that it pulls them up towards the vision? And that's a skill in itself. Because your role as a leader is not only to think bigger picture, to be strategic, but it's how do I craft a vision so compelling? How do I communicate this vision and a purpose that my team will automatically start to move in that direction? And there's this example that is referred to very often at NASA. So when they were building the first rocket, you could ask an astronaut, an engineer, an IT specialist, someone in the accounting department, even a janitor, what is your role? I am helping to put the first man on the moon. So whether you're cleaning restrooms, whether you're in the accounting department, reconciling debits and credits, whether you're in IT, whether you're building the rocket, whether you're the astronaut, everyone is moving towards one goal. And that's the purpose of a leader. And once, as a leader, as an executive, you start to communicate in the same language as your team, and vice versa, as a powerhouse professional, once you start to communicate as an executive and a leader, magic happens. Because now all of a sudden, you're not speaking Spanish versus Chinese, you're speaking the same language. And then you can start moving forward to the strategic objectives and what is really needed beyond delivering on the role, beyond getting the job done. How boring is it to only get the job done? Aren't you here to leave a legacy? Aren't you here to make an impact on your team, on the organization, and for yourself as a professional? To unlock your full potential instead of clocking in, clocking out? What is the value that you bring? And how can you start communicating the language of executives starting today so you become an asset instead of a resource? So I'm going to leave you with this. For the next week, what is the one thing you can do to get you closer to the top of the Himalaya and aligned with the language that your leaders, partners, and executives speak? See you in the next episode. You've been listening to Unlocked Your Career by Design with Samantha Flores. If today's episode sparked something, here's your next step. Follow the show and leave a 5-star review. That's how we reach more ambitious women ready to break barriers. And if you know a colleague or friend who needs this, share it with them, because lifting one woman lifts us all. Until next week, keep owning your spotlights.